Today's headline is Trials of Poor Jack Tar. The subheadline says, The life of the sailor lad is far from smooth sailing. Measures for his relief. This article was written for the Commercial Gazette. It says, The familiar songs and stories may tell what they please about the happiest moment of Jack's ports. From the time of life when he is ashore, and how he longs to reach port, but the facts do not bear out these sentiments, at any rate, among the sailors in most large American ports. From the time a sailing ship reaches New York Harbor till she leaves, her crew are not free agents, but rather the slaves of certain agents who pretend to work for their advantage, but who in reality live from their meager earnings. Even the masters of these vessels are not free agents, for they too are bound by cast iron contracts to one of the worst systems that ever existed. The origin of all the trouble is the shipping agent. In New York, for instance, there are scores if not hundreds of these men whose business it is to get crews for outgoing ships. Competition for patronage has become so sharp between them that they offer good-sized premiums to owners of vessels for the privilege of supplying their ships with seamen every time they reach this port. The wages of the sailors average from $14 to $20 a month, but from this the agent agrees to take off $4 per man, perhaps for each crew shipped. This bonus, as well as his own profit, which is a fat one too, the agent must get from the sailor, and he does it from the advance allotment. These shipping agencies are usually over or in saloons along the riverfront, on South and West Streets in New York, and Mr. Agent calls into his dingy little office a dozen of the idle sailormen he finds on the streets, waiting for work, when he has a call from a master for a crew. They haggle a little over the terms perhaps, but if the sailor does not accept what is offered, then the agent walks out into the street and calls in others until he finds those who are satisfied with what he offers. This perhaps is $16 a month for a deep-sea voyage of 6 months. Those who like the terms sign the articles agreeing to ship with such and such a vessel on such and such terms. They never see the ship until they go aboard. They are told perhaps that she is a bark in the East Indian trade and will carry machinery out and fruit back. She may be a leaky old tub in the last stages of decay, out of which before she sinks with all on board, the owners want to get one more voyage. They have no alternative but to keep the contract they signed, in utter ignorance of the ship's condition, or be arrested for desertion. But supposing she may be eminently respectable in every way, and ships a full crew, Jack's lot is even then hard enough. From the advance allotment draft which he signs, $12 or $14 perhaps is taken by the agent as a commission for getting him the job. Then too, the other jackals of the waterfront, the runners for the boarding houses, all of whom are in league with the shipping agents, come in for their share of the meager advance which Jack gets before starting out to sea. Since he has landed from his last cruise, the sailor has had to live at one of these sailors' boarding houses, and of course gets into debt for his board and drink, for no sailorman can get along without his grog on shore. The runner gets his slice of the allotment for which Jack is signed, and with what is left, supposing that there is something left, which is frequently not the case, Jack buys what he needs to complete his sea outfit, for every sailor has to supply himself with clothing, tobacco, and eating utensils. Well, he ships at last, and gets off to sea, but his first 2 months' pay is already spent in the allotment note before he leaves land. If it all went before he could complete his outfit, he must resort to the slop chest on board his ship, and he never gets anything fit to wear or eat, although higher prices than those on shore are charged for what he buys. The day he steps ashore, his contract expires, and he's discharged. From that moment, he cannot sleep on the ship or get his meals there. He must take away his clothes and go ashore, and furthermore, without any money. 3 or 4 days later, sometimes a week or 10 days later, he gets the balance due him. But this is only 3 or 4 months' pay at best, for the first 2 months' advance was spent before he left shore. Now the sharks begin to get in their fine work again on poor Jack. The instant his ship ties up to a wharf, and if the master will allow it, long before she ties up, the boarding house runners and crimps are aboard and setting their nets for the innocent sailormen. Having no money when they come ashore, they must go to some sailor's boarding house where they can get credit. This is given to them by the runners, and Jack transfers his kit to the dingy little cubby in one of these vile dens, for which he pays so well, for he gets it on tick, and everything costs more on this principle of buying. But one of the conditions of the sailor's credit is that the runner for the boarding house will get the draft for the balance of Jack's pay when he receives it from the master of the vessel. And the runner gets it too, Free goes before the shipping commissioner when the crew are paid off and secures the note then and there. Now it stands to reason that Jack gets drunk. No self-respecting sailorman ever fails to get drunk when he comes ashore, and the longer the voyage and the more money he gets, the drunker he gets. His boarding house supplies him with all he wants of the firewater, and frequently more than he wants. They keep a record of it, and when that paycheck reaches them, they generally own most, if not all of it. If the accounts do not grow fast enough, it is easy enough to make them grow faster, for Jack is too drunk to know how much he's spending. It is to a good many people's interest to prevent Jack's getting any change from his paycheck, for once he gets into debt, he is no longer a free agent until he can pay out the mortgage on his next allotment, which is not until he ships again. If there should be some change due the paid-off sailorman, and it sometimes happens that he is entitled to a small balance, it is always suggested that he had better leave the difference with the boarding house people, who will keep it to his credit for future expenses. Once he gets into debt, he cannot even change boarding houses, for they hold his kit, and himself too if they can, until the debt is paid off for the next allotment. Now, Jack is in no hurry to go to sea again. He never is, until his money and his credit run out, and the latter lasts only as long as the amount of his next allotment will carry him, for the boarding house people know how much he will get, and they will not carry him beyond that amount. When his periodical round of dissipation reaches its forced end, Jack hurries around to the shipping agents to get another job. Again he may haggle about terms, but if he will not accept what is offered, he must stay on the beach, as it is expressed in the vernacular. And as no one will trust him farther, he must take what is offered to him, and even be grateful for that. It makes no difference whether the ship sails back for his native port, for New York, for Honolulu, or for India. He must take what he can get and look happy. Now these shipping agents exist in almost every port in the world, but their methods are not always as bad as here in America. They are the middlemen of the sailor's profession, but Jack always refers to them as jackals or crimps, and the amount of their commission he calls blood money. If there are many sailors on the beach, poorer wages are offered, and larger blood money is charged to the tars, for larger bonuses must be paid to the owners. If, on the other hand, there are a few men to be had, as is occasionally the case in some ports during the busiest season, the agents sometimes charge the owners of the ships for securing crews and reduce the tax on Jack. But as a general rule, it may be said, Jack, he pays the freight. It will readily be seen that it is to the owner's advantage not to ship crews for the return trip, for they get a commission from the agent at the other port for shipping a new crew, even though some of the same men may be engaged again, and it allows the crimps to squeeze more blood money from the sailors. For the same reasons, they will not deal directly with the sailormen and insist on getting their crews for the agents. The crimping system, as it is called, is the most pernicious influence which prevents America from taking to the sea as a trade. They will not stand the abuses that sailors had to put up with, both ashore and at sea. The most recent reports of the United States Shipping Commissioner show that the number of American-born seamen sailing out of these ports is constantly decreasing. During 1893, only about 3,000 of the 15,000 sailors leaving our ports were American-born, while as many more were British, and nearly twice as many Scandinavians. If measures are not soon taken to protect our merchant marine from the abuses which now threaten its life, and to make the sea a more attractive calling for Americans to follow, there will be few Americans in the trade before the end of the century is reached. What dangers this, friends, can only be realized from a careful study of the situation. In times of war, the only source from which we could recruit our navy would be the merchant marine. England subsidizes our able-bodied seamen as a naval reserve so as to have them always at her command in times of need. Any English ship which flies the flag of the naval reserve and consequently is manned by members of this subsidized body of British sailors can be boarded in times of necessity by English authorities, no matter in what port she may be found, and the seamen under subsidy taken off for duty in Her Majesty's Navy. This furnishes excellent material, for the men thus recruited are the most experienced seamen to be found. But should the present state of affairs continue in this country, America would have few if any sailors to fall back on in case of war 10 years from now. They cannot be taught in time for service. To build a strong merchant marine, a country must make the service attractive. Much of the present brutality and lax enforcement of laxer laws must be done away with before the American-born, free and equal spirited citizen will take to the sea for a livelihood. The stories of brutality at sea among the masters of these sailing ships, of starvation and overwork for underpaid seamen, and of risking the lives of crews by sending out of port rotten ships whose timbers cannot withstand the first severe storm they encounter, become more numerous every year. Until such abuses are stopped by the more rigid enforcement of such laws as we now have for the protection of seamen, and the enactment of even more stringent ones, there is small chance of building up such a naval strength as has given England the time-honored title of Mistress of the Seas. Poor Jack. It is to him we must look for protection in time of trouble. Yet now, in the time of his trouble, he finds but few friends to help him. Someday we shall realize our mistake, and then when the Scandinavians and the British refuse to man our warships, we shall find after all it is not the biggest navy, but the best navy, and the best sailors to man that navy that will win the fight. This story came from the great state of Ohio, being reported in the Cincinnati Commercial Gazette of July 21st, 1895. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.